handed me everything that looked like you were handing, so
Yeah,
I'm going to
there's
go
4
with...
handouts total, right?
Yeah,
If you want, give them to Kevin, just in case, that way he has the document for reference, in case people ask questions on it.
okay, everybody, we're going to be starting in 1 minute. What's that?
We got one. Oh, there you go. Do you need another one, Todd? Okay.
All right, so we're going to get started. So, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Yes.
right, I'll accept a motion of what is offered.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are approved. Everybody's here tonight. All right, Lindsay had asked if she could start the meeting with an overview of the budget, and I think that's prudent. So, Lindsay, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just going to catch my breath the moment I was running. Apologize. I just wanted to begin by giving a little history to the 2020-2021, the 2021-2022 budget. The board began the budget review process in September. This is pretty much a brand new board, so working our way through the budget with some consistency and attention to detail was important. The first thing that we did was, as a group, kind of look at what had been cut from the prior budget and discuss between the board and the public some of the important things to reinstate. Some of those things were full-day kindergarten, transportation inside of the 2 miles and to a high school, and athletics and non-CBU raises. So with that in mind, the budget was built through administration. We returned 1 custodian into the budget, 4 paraprofessionals that had previously been cut. And when reviewing staffing needs, we had to go through a scenario, 4 different scenarios and options of what we might want to expect, considering that we're trying to build a budget 18 months out and, unknown if there's going to be COVID restrictions, etc. So keeping that in mind, we did build the budget to allow some of that flexibility, given that we don't know what those staffing needs might be. There were some normal increases that we see in the budget yearly to various contracts, such as New Hampshire retirement, the busing contract, and there will be a separate warrant article for the teachers contract, because that's where we are this year for the Winchester Teachers Association is on this year's ballot. Overall, we did come to a unanimous vote to present the budget to the Budget Committee of $12,835,497. And in conclusion, we just are really hoping that this year can be a little more positive and proactive, and that we can do our job to come to an agreement and present a budget in a cohesive and maybe an improved presentation to the general public when it comes time for deliberative.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments or questions about what Lindsay had to say there? All right. So, thank you, Lindsay. As the school board representative to the budget committee, what would you like to address first in this book?
Well, I think, we've all sat around this table before. We've gone through this budget line by line previously. I'm assuming you've all looked at the budget, you've looked at the bottom line, and, quite frankly, I'd really like to just kind of cut to the chase and determine what some of the big questions are, if there's any clarification, and, if there's going to be a move to change this budget at all, let's just get that out on the table.
Okay. I do want to start off with one question. I see as far as tuition, your current enrollment 2020, 2021, 2021, 2022, the numbers are identical. The 8th grade obviously moves to 9th, which is fine, but what's interesting to me is the numbers are identical. There's 164 total, 119 regular, and 45 special education.
So are you asking if that's a typo or
Yes,
if that's really identical?
that is exactly what I'm asking, because it just seems really wild that could happen. Because we're literally are exiting 12th grade as the identical number as our incoming 9th grade.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, go ahead.
Oh, please do.
But it is correct.
Oh, we'll give you a mic. That way Nat can hear it.
It's for the people at home.
Yeah.
Hi, people at home.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, so anyways, yes, it is correct. There is 164. There's a little bit of variance between the classes, like the 11th going up. It is the same, and it should be. We had some change around this year when they came in. I know it's not normal, but that's just the way it came down.
Just the way it worked out.
It's just the way it worked out. We had movement and,
Sometimes it's all in where it falls, too.
Right.
Where that
Right.
count falls.
yeah, so.
Okay. And then why did the tuition cost go down? Do we have?
Keene, they dropped their tuition rates. That's why. So if you look at the first page in the tuition, it tells you what the new rates are. And on my page where you saw the, going back and forth, underneath it, the 2021 school year, regular ed was $15,085, special ed was $32,494. They came down in 21-22 to $14,891 and $30,624. They base that on their costs annually. And I think the year before, we also had a jump, but the year before that, I think we actually stayed the same or came down a couple dollars on one of them.
Okay, it seemed like a rather substantial cut, and I was just trying to understand how they could afford to do that.
But there was a big jump last year, actually, in special ed costs from the previous year. So I don't know if whatever they had going on has changed. I can't tell you that, but that's what their new amount is.
Thank you.
Okay?
Can you turn on your mic, Teresa? Can you turn on your mic, please?
It is. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Just in a general question, this was voted on by you guys 5-0, the increases that are there. But my general question is going to be a couple of things, especially about salaries. Did you guys, when you made the decision, or any increases that are here, are related to increases in salaries? Were everyone got the same amount, or was there just a variety of different increases for salaries depending on the position of the person?
It was 2.5% for all non-CBU, so non-collective bargaining unit employees, of which there are 20.
20? Okay, so 2.5% for, give an example of what who that is. Is that the para, the aides?
No, that's the superintendent, the business manager, the building principal, the facilities manager, speech, the custodians.
Custodians. And how many people, right, that's 20 altogether?
Yes.
Was there any increases given to, say, aides and carers, or people that are there every day?
So those are those groups, the paraprofessionals and the teachers, are part of a collective bargaining. So they're part of a union. So the paraprofessionals contract was on last year's ballot, it did pass. So they did get a raise in this current budget, and there is a raise in the next year's budget, which was passed this year.
Right, how much is that? This
Oh.
how much will that be? Is it like 3 something?
I don't remember. I can get back to you on that. I don't have that ballot in front of me. The 3,967,000. Yeah.
What do you think what that is? Because that's what the state's going to tell you what you can use it for, right?
So that is adequacy aid.
So the state tells you what to use it for, right?
No, the state doesn't necessarily tell us exactly how that money has to be used, but they come to that final number of adequacy aid by building in some of these other kinds of grants, or calculations rather, excuse me. So, for instance, there's a certain amount of money that you get if, that first one says grade 3 reading differentiated aid. So there's a certain allotment of money available for that group of students who falls within that particular intervention need. There's a specific amount of the total calculated cost of adequate education. That's the root of the state's calculation of how, the per pupil cost is calculated.
But you can't use
This
money, you can't use to build a facility.
This money we could use to build a facility. I mean, you wouldn't use adequacy aid. Adequacy aid is used for direct curriculum.
Correct. Direct curriculum.
But also you don't
Students.
busing, anything that might be within the budget that is directly, student driven. Oh, I heard Mary in the corner of my ear, so.
Sorry, Ken was asking me a question. So adequacy aid is, I'm going to tell you, adequacy aid is built off of free and reduced. A lot of our grants are too, so just so you know, there's a free and reduced number in here. And I'm going to kind of put this little pitch out there. We lost $120,000 because of free and reduced numbers going down. Because free and reduced numbers have gone down. And that's because we're not getting the applications that we got before. Again, we are a CEP school, which means that all meals are free, but we still need those applications, and there's still time to get them in. It's just shy of $1,900 per child. I mean, if you think about that, if there's a family of 4, you've got almost $8,000 in adequacy aid that will be coming into the district.
What's stopping the applications from coming in?
There's no incentive to fill them out. That's part of it, because again, everything is free.
Well, I mean, that's just it. There is incentive, though, wouldn't there be, if it's offset?
I can't force somebody to fill them out, though. Legally, I can't say to you, in order to get your free meals or under CEP, that you have to fill these out. So we're kind of at that, that point. But just remember, Title I money, IDA money, Title II, all those grants are based off of that number. That's where the biggest loss we had this year, because we lost $138,000 in adequacy aid this year.
That is unfortunate, but my question is are we properly explaining this because it's taxation? I mean, $130,000 lost.
Goes back onto the taxpayer,
right.
Correct.
So are we actually, how are we addressing that with the people?
Well,
Go ahead.
we've noted it at all of our board meetings, requesting that people complete it. We have done an email. We have done our robocall. It is on the website. We mentioned it at budget. The select board mentioned it for us. The school board mentioned it when we came here for select board.
We've sent it home.
We sent it home. We sent it home as we usually do as part of the initial packet.
I just remember that, back in the day, you'd send something home, have the parents sign it, and bring it back.
And it does go home with that paperwork.
Yeah.
It goes home with it. And I guess the biggest thing for me to say to people is, it's not going through a bunch of hands. It's a number that's entered into a system that determines whether or not you qualify.
Right.
And even if you feel you don't, still fill it out, because you just don't know.
Is everybody at home hearing that?
Well, like you said, it's a lot of money to
It
leave on
is
the
a
table.
lot of money.
And last year they gave you an extra $300 on top of that. So, when they gave that money. But
so-
the 138, just so you know, Chester, is off of, it excludes that infrastructure money that they gave us. So it's just based on what they gave us for adequately, not that extra money. Okay?
Thank you.
Sorry.
Mary, I have a question that I think you'll probably be the one answering. Still on adequacy aid here. Looking at this first packet of paper for adequacy aid. So the state has here for the 2020-2021 estimate number of membership listed as 506.
Yes.
However, all our paperwork shows 568. That's a 62 student difference. How's that number
It
generated?
goes on daily average membership. And again, like I said, when they sent me this stuff, the estimates, it's estimated. They could have done one they did on November 15th. One might have been done before October 1st final count that came in. Hang on here, let me get, are you looking at the second one?
In this first stapled together packet,
Yep.
the very last page,
The one that says 1920 membership.
the very first line
Oh,
says
okay,
1920,
yes.
and then the next one,
Yep, they're giving us
Is
an
the
estimated
2021.
amount. Because originally they had calculated us at 523, but now they're changing that number because they're basing it off of 1920 and the fact that on October 1st we had lower counts. So that's why they brought it down to 506. They go from 523 to 506.
there's no way to fix that number to make it more accurate. That's like 13% difference from what we really have.
But they pick a day and time. They pick October 1st, and
And-
that's the number they use.
And it's just an estimate that they later correct
They
for
correct
the
like
actual
an-
budget.
Yeah, and it's average daily membership. So that means if a kid is out, we don't get aid for that day. So it comes out to that. But given the fact that we're in the pandemic, last year they said we don't have to keep track of attendance starting in March when everybody went out. I'm not sure how they're going to handle it this year. They haven't given us any guidance on that yet. But like I said, the kids are still active. We're still doing remote. But I don't know how they're planning on keeping track of that.
All right, yeah, because that's a huge difference, because even
It is.
just on their comparison from last year is a 3% reduction, which was $140,000.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep. But the biggest drop is in, like I said, the 100.
so on October 1st, they actually check like how many students are.
Yes. We upload the attendance on October 6th, the number of kids that are registered in our database.
Okay.
And that goes to the state.
That are registered or they're in school that day?
In school, that's who is a registered student at the time, that goes up. Whatever is in our Power School database goes into the state.
Okay, well, that still don't make sense. If we have 568 and on October 1st we only had 506.
Which one are you looking at the second one? Is that what you're looking at?
No, I'm still looking at that first page. It says
The first page I
506
see-
for the,
523 under Winchester and 506. Where are you getting the 5?
yeah, the 568 is what's on your paperwork
Can I
in front
go
of the
look at what
book
you're
here.
looking at?
Please do.
Under enrollment,
568 is total enrollment here.
But that
As of
includes
October
out of
1st.
district too. That includes out of district, and again, they base it on average daily membership, so they're probably taking an estimate off of that figure. The state does.
Okay, so what's the state do with our out-of-district students if they're not financially helping us with them, but we're financially responsible for them?
I know that we get Cat A from that too, if kids are out of district.
Yeah.
Where the state will pick up anything over 50,000 per kid, depending on the student and why they're out of district. Yes, they're still our students, but they're not physically in our building.
Right.
So-
No, which, I mean,
It's a different situation.
in a way kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it really doesn't, because at the end of the day, it's still a difference of 62 students, and if we're not getting, if we're financially responsible for them, but not financially getting any assistance for them, it just doesn't that doesn't add up.
Oh, that's the 1920 number. I'm sorry, Ben, you're looking, that's 1920. I don't have the count from 2021 in here. I apologize.
568, okay, so that's still,
Sorry about that.
but I
Yes,
mean,
I'm going,
Well, the numbers
that's still
are so good.
that's still a 45 student difference,
yeah.
because they had it at 523.
And a lot of kids may have pulled out and gone to homeschool. But what some people don't understand is that you can remain in school.
Oh,
Sorry, go back to here. If you pull out and you go complete homeschool, we lose all aid. If you pull out and go full remote, we still get the aid.
That's
in
an
this
interesting, so
situation.
what is the defining feature of that?
Homeschool, you write us a letter and tell us you're homeschooling your child.
Perfect.
Yep. Okay?
I just had a general question, I probably wouldn't know the answer, but, on the capital reserve page, you have the oil change removal at just over $44,000. Wasn't that something that you guys discussed with us last year? Because the oil went down, the money not even the budget actually went down, the oil going down. You guys went to propane, because you got a $43,000 capital reserve expenditure.
So the oil tank removal listed, you'll see that says 2021. That's the current projects that we have been working on. So yes, over this summer, we removed the oil tank, we did the univents, we did the Thayer chimney,
Yeah, I'm just concerned.
and that main entry concrete.
I'm not issue with the other thing. I'm concerned with why now did you decide did you guys decide to remove the oil tank? Is it because they needed to be removed because the state said they have to go out, went to propane instead of oil? What happened that you had to do that?
So with the $550,000 infrastructure fund that we got one-time money last year, one of the projects was to completely convert to propane. So we're no longer using the oil tanks. There was 3 of them on the property. 2 were 29 years old. 1 was 30 years old. And we spend in the $1,700 range a year to maintain those tanks for what's required by the state.
Yeah.
And if they're not going to be utilized and they're aging,
Get
it's
rid of
a
them.
wiser choice to remove them completely. And that's what the $43,000 expense was for all the soil testing and all the certification through the state, and to remove, dispose of, and fill the holes for the oil tanks.
Just for the benefit of the people viewing, could you give your name and title?
Ian Spencer, Facilities Director.
Thank you. What is the average classroom size right now?
The average classroom size right now,
Yeah.
after our cut last year, we have 2 teachers per class. So our class sizes are anywhere from about 15 to 20 students per class.
Okay, what is it, 15 to 20?
The reason I asked.
Some of them are larger because we have some classes that are over 40, so some of them could be as high as 20.
Okay. The reason I ask is because I'm seeing a 41% increase in teacher salaries and whatnot. And what is the anticipated, if this budget were to be passed, what is the anticipated classroom size should that prevail?
So a big reason why you're seeing the increase in staffing is, well, there's several. One is bringing back full-time kindergarten, full-day kindergarten, and preschool.
Down for 1 second, because that's important to me. Bringing back,
The full-day kindergarten,
is it a full teacher though?
it is a full teacher.
One full teacher, right, for kindergarten?
Yep.
Okay.
That's okay. The next reason, and I can get a copy of this for you. Coming into the next, the 2021-2022, what will class look like for, if we have still dealing with COVID? We went through a number of different scenarios. They include, what if we return to school all in person, no distance required, no remote only option? We would just be bringing back the full-time kindergarten and the preschool. So we're looking at adding, we would have 21 teachers. If we had to come back,
Which,
So you're just going a preschool teacher and a kindergarten teacher right now, a full-time?
no, this budget is built for the potential that we return to school in person with social distancing required and a remote only option also required of us.
so this budget is reflective of what you just said, remote only and social distancing.
Yes, so 25 and a half teachers would be included in that.
That's going to have line items, 25 and a half teachers?
Yes.
I guess the question, if we're going to remote learning, which is likely based on how the world is going right now, why do we need more teachers? Because all of a sudden class size doesn't seem as relevant.
Well, we're never going to be only remote. Okay. There will always be a need for services to be offered at the school because there are students that a remote only option does not necessarily work for. And we might not be remote only. We might have returned to school. So the school board had to balance if we end up going back to school versus if we have this remote issue.
I'm just trying to understand it. That's...
No, that was a big highlight that I had. That increase was $440,000. I didn't know.
Plus the ancillary expenses of health benefits.
That's not including any raises. That's just bringing back teachers, right?
Correct. That's based off of the current known numbers because the contract goes to the voters.
Right. That's just no raise. You just put the existing teachers and then bringing back those ones that want, right?
Yes.
Well, that would include the raises that were already voted on 2 years ago.
This will be a
Correct.
fresh budget.
Oh, yeah. Okay, never mind. Sorry, I apologize. I'm thinking too far ahead.
We can talk about anything we want. If you have a question, fire away.
No, I was just on this one. Let's go down to the teachers' retirement. That's, are there any teachers leaving? Is that why?
We have one retirement. That's New Hampshire retirement.
All right. What is that?
It's an increase of $126,000.
Right. So I did reference that in my opening statement that we did see an increase to the cost of New Hampshire retirement, and Mary can explain it further.
How many teachers does that include?
That right now would include the extra teachers that we're looking to add in and the ones that are current. I just want you to know that New Hampshire retirement increased for teachers to 21.02% from 17.8%. And we have no control over that. So that's for the next 2 years. And they increased on regular salaries as well to 14.06. And each of them was a huge jump. And unfortunately, we have no control over that. So that...
That's not going to be for any teachers leaving then, right?
No, that is just New Hampshire retirement. That would be in a separate line item if we had a retired teacher. Yep.
That's what we pay into the retirement system for all of our staff.
Yeah. Yep.
And if anybody has questions, feel free to butt right in.
Well, actually, can I...
So far,
Can I say
Teresa's
one?
asked the same questions I had.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Teresa, I wanted to tell you, Teresa, on line 2 on the first page of the budget, you'll see $17,400. That is for a teacher that is retiring. We have one that actually just put in a request.
Okay, one's retired.
Yep, so that's the 17,400, would that be that payout on that teacher when they retired? In addition to.
Are you rehiring anybody that didn't come back because of the pandemic? Any teachers and stuff?
You mean budget cut?
In the current budget,
In this one right now, this one we're working on right now for the year.
we'll be adding staff to that budget, yes. But we don't know who that would be.
Besides the kindergarten and preschool,
Besides the kindergarten and the preschool, correct.
okay, what other besides the kindergarten and preschool would under that line are you interested in?
So something that I think is really important to keep in mind, and I think that this got pretty confusing last year to basically the general public, our teachers, the majority of them are certified in multiple grades and in various specialties. So at the end of the year, we don't necessarily say we're going to hire a third grade teacher or a sixth grade teacher. We look at our existing staff, we put them where we most need them, and then we hire where the greatest population has increased. So what I can say is our goal overall is to keep class sizes in the 15 to 17 range. So wherever we need a teacher, that's where they will be hired. So for instance, last year, there was a lot of question as to why we couldn't keep 2 kindergarten teachers and just take a teacher from another grade. Well, you can't do that because that wasn't the need of the population in the rest of the school or the middle school. We have to place our certified staff where we need them the most.
Well, one question I've got is, we're looking at a 41% increase, but we're only talking about 25% on average reduction. Because we're averaging a 20 person per classroom, we're looking to go to 15. It just seems like...
Well, I think Teresa was still looking for the answer to
sorry.
her question too.
So-
is, like total.
How many teachers, like, with the pandemic and stuff like that, some teachers may not have come back. You may need, I know my own personal feeling with talking to teachers that I want another kindergarten class in there if the enrollment warrants it, and that was taken out. And I want to know, you say right now that you have 2.5, 2 teachers per classroom, but you had to stop the kindergarten, the third kindergarten, because how many kindergarten classes you got there now? Just
We
one?
have 1 kindergarten teacher, 2 half-day classes. So we have an enrollment of about 49, are we at for kindergarten? 49 students. 25 are on the morning class and 24 are in the afternoon class. And 1 teacher handles those students.
Okay, tell me, before last year's budget, how many kindergarten kindergarten teachers did you have?
3.
And did you have any aides in helping them?
That's dependent upon the student's IEP. The short answer is yes, I would assume that there were aides or paraprofessionals associated with certain students in those grades. But we don't automatically place an aide in every class.
Okay, because I'm concerned with the staff, and so that's why I just don't think that I'm asking you.
No, please do.
I'm concerned of our staff too.
What I'm saying to you is this. Say they go next year, or this budget right now, right? That line item is, if you were to want all the staff that's mandatory for the teachers and the aides and the parents, how many more would you have to increase in that line item to make it work like it did before?
Well, I think that's what they've done.
That's exactly what we've done. What we've done,
I just want you to tell me that. I want everybody to hear it. That percentage increase is based on what you guys feel as a budget, as a school board, is the staff that you're going to need to successfully return some of the teachers or some of the classrooms that need to be there.
correct. Return to in-person, no social distancing, and remote as an option for students. That is,
You're okay. You
and
guys are okay with that.
Yes, and actually, Teresa, I apologize. I can break it down for you because I see here that Val did provide that information.
Somebody else will ask you to break it down, I'm gonna ask you to break something else down and put it down in this.
I don't really need to break down on this. I just wanted to know, like, just the short answer, total number of teachers added in this line item.
25,
Well, it's,
We currently have 18 teachers, and that budget number is for 25 and a half teachers.
okay, so it's 7.5 added from what we currently have.
Yes.
Okay. And that's just teachers. That's not including the paras and,
That does not include the paras.
okay.
I'm not saying that you have to agree with me on that, it's just, I'm saying to you that, you know, in a general tone, that certain teachers of classes need to be put back into the budget that we're working on right now.
I also,
Right, which I don't disagree with. I was just curious as to the actual number of how many teachers more is this budget compared to what we have right now.
And they can't give us the answer right now because those 7 teachers, they don't know, they can put them anywhere because they're based on.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me which grades they're in or what just the number
it's
of
the head count that
the head
matters.
count of people being hired. Right,
No, those are
Right.
good questions you're asking.
right.
something else.
I did have another quick question only because you mentioned a number that threw a flag up for me. You said that we currently have 42 kindergarten students?
I think I threw a number out at about 49.
Yeah, I believe it was
49,
49, she said.
Okay, so,
But I mean, I look at enrollment regularly, so I could be referencing an enrollment number from September.
So we won't hold you in
but
stone to it.
but even just saying 49, well, that's the last number you saw, but that's an 11 student increase from last year on October.
I'm channeling Val Carey on the phone, and she's requesting if we could table this enrollment teacher numbers, because it would be better. She's unfortunately, she cannot be here tonight clearly, but she would prefer to be here and answering those questions, so we're not going down a path with some misinformation.
Well, I wasn't sure.
No,
we were gonna vote.
and that's why I was only looking for those specific
But
numbers
I
of how many
think, you know,
teachers.
like she says, the number in that line includes other teachers. The 18 is just classroom teachers. So I guess she's just requesting where I see some.
Well, that's why I tried to say to Teresa that it didn't matter to me what positions those people were being hired for.
Yeah.
Just that specific line item. How many people is it
It's just one
being
second.
paid out of it right now currently, and how many people is it estimated to be paid
Yeah,
with this budget?
Yeah, and Ken, just for the benefit of people at home, can you just say
And
your
some of
name?
that staffing requirement is not recognizing COVID world, what's going to be remote. Clearly, if the COVID world goes away, the staffing requirement might be different. But Val understands all those nuances of social distancing, remote, hybrid.
Right.
And those,
Right. And
those criteria lead to different enrollment numbers.
right.
And
And
she's really asking that she'll be here next week and she could clarify questions that need to be
It was
clarified.
highly unlikely we were going to vote on anything tonight anyway.
Yeah.
But just for the benefit of people at home, if you could just give us your name and title. One second.
Lindsay, if somebody could go to the principal or somebody and say, hey, on Tuesday, next Tuesday, they ask this question. I don't expect a complete answer.
She's watching at home.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
no,
right.
yeah. Okay, that being said, if you could just introduce yourself for the people watching at home.
Ken Dassaw, Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome. I hope that worked for you, Val.
But
I hope it worked for you. Where's your kindergarten classes?
But just going by that 49 number, like I said, for enrollment in kindergarten, that's showing that right now we have 11 students more in kindergarten than we did last year on October 31st, when we had 3 teachers, and now we only have 1 and 11 students more.
We saw a significant increase in enrollment coming into this year.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
So I did see field trips that were put into this budget. Is that a wise decision with the COVID era? I know that we could be anticipating that going away, but we also should probably not anticipate that. It was only a $2,000 one, but I just, it was under science field trip. I just thought that was a luxury expenditure.
Field trips and sports was something that the board felt was important to reintegrate back into the budget. Keeping in mind that COVID could be a thing, we did not add back in Nature's Classroom, which is a larger percentage of that field trip cost. It's usually about $7,500 to $10,000. So we just added in that nominal amount in the off chance that we might have a more normal year.
Well, in light of that information, I'm inclined to agree with you then.
And then Chester, do you mind just telling me which page you're on when you reference?
Oh,
I don't always know where you're flipping to.
Sorry, I was
That's
on
okay.
page 2 of the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, on page 3, under supplies general expenses, we have a 110% increase, $14,200. Why? It's a huge increase.
That was one of the lines that was significantly reduced. I know that Mary provided you a year-to-date.
Yes, we got that moments
Okay.
before the meeting started. Well, at least,
Yeah, we just got it tonight.
yeah, literally moments.
So in our year-to-date, we are already noticing significant impact to all of our spending, obviously. Supplies took a big hit, and that wasn't really the reduced amount would not be normally a recommended amount. So administration restored that supplies and general expenses.
If I remember correctly, last year, well, quite a year ago, back in March, April, whenever it was, almost all the supply lines were cut in half, correct?
Yes.
Understood.
The goal this year was to put them back where they were before.
Our goal this year was to put some of those lines back to where they were before and to slowly reintegrate the rest of what might be needed. If there wasn't a need for that supply line to be increased, it wouldn't have just been arbitrarily increased.
Who did, on this, I think you answered this page 3, the bottom line for kindergarten screening and orientation.
Mm-hmm.
There was an increase, right?
It was because that was something that was cut from the last budget. So historically, you'll see, in year-end 2019 and in year-end 2020, we held pretty steady with around an average of $4,000 each year for kindergarten screening. It was cut out of the budget this year, mostly because we only had one kindergarten teacher in 2 classes. So we did not do kindergarten screening, and it was proposed with adding back in another kindergarten teacher to do the screening again.
See,
And then you have an administrative event staff salary, second from the bottom, is that one staff member?
What page was that?
She's still on page 3.
Sorry.
That's okay. And it's
From the bottom, administrative event staff salary, is that the one staff member, that is 17,000?
yes, that is one staff member.
What?
That is one staff.
I had a quick question.
Thank you.
On the same, well, before we get off this page,
I just want to clarify, I'm sorry. It is one salary, this administrative special education staff salary, but it is the same person who holds another position within the school. That is the amount of money that we pay her off of that line for special education related duties that she does. She's a full-time employee.
On the kindergarten screening, excuse me, unfortunately, I have none of my notes from last year. They burnt up in my fire. But I could swear almost that last year during budget season, during our budget meetings, that it was discussed then removing it because it wasn't, the administration, I could have swore, told us that it wasn't a necessary thing anymore. Like it was a thing of the past. It wasn't being done the same way. I remember during budget season, while we were discussing things,
I remember you asking that happened, or, asking or suggesting it, not telling them that they should do that, but I remember you saying something, at least me about it.
I do remember it was a discussion during the budget meetings. That's why I was trying to clarify because, and I wish I had my notes.
That sounds like it's probably a good question for Val to follow up on. I don't recall us saying that it was unnecessary. We wouldn't have put it back into the budget if we thought that it was unnecessary.
Well, that's why
So you just wanted it on one line item, and they had it on two different, they were paying out of two different places.
yeah, I just remember there was something about this line that we had discussed removing.
I don't have my,
Eliminated, put it on one line item, just do.
I mean, I'm sure Val will make a mental note. She'll make a note for herself to follow up. I'll go back and look at last year's budget book and see if I made any notes about that specifically. I don't recall us. I mean, we utilize screening to ensure that we are placing our students together in the best possible way to maximize their learning experience. Studies show that catching certain opportunities for intervention in preschool and kindergarten can greatly impact your ability to potentially avoid future special education costs.
Yeah.
So we use screening for that, and it looks like Val has a comment.
Not that clearly she's watching, her internet reception or Wi-Fi must be working. And it's also one of those things that you said earlier, if it's a question, or you said, Teresa, that will bring back the answers.
Right, yeah, and I'm fine with
At the
that.
moment, she's saying, it was only taken out when kindergarten was cut. In fact, the current kindergarten teacher did it this year without pay. It was so important to her. We can't have that to be expected for next year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Val.
Shout out to Val.
Val is home in mandatory quarantine after some travel, so that's why she couldn't join us today.
Hey, listen, are we still on page 3?
We can go to any page you want. It's general.
Budgeted $500,000 for aid salary to sped, and now you're asking for another $30,000. So proposes for $530,000. How many people is that?
That was 5 you said, wasn't it?
4.
4?
Four, asking for a fifth one to be put in there?
A fourth one to be, 4 more to be put in.
We added 4 paras back into the AIDS line. But this also includes, you'll remember that they had an increase that was approved on the ballot last year. So
This is from the 4 paras that you want to put back in there?
it's not just for the, go ahead, Mary.
It's not just the 4 paras. It's also, remember when all that happened, we had people leave and people move that we hired at lower pay. So that's why that rate, it only is $30,000. Those paras that we're hiring back equal more than that. But because of the changeover in staff, it's less than what it would be. Just,
It's $530,000.
yes, for all our paras, correct.
How many is that include?
You would ask me that question, I have it in my numbers over there, I can go look and tell you how many. Yeah, I can do that. Give me a minute.
And this is gonna be a whirlwind right here. This one, I have no idea. Same page, same back channel, $303.25 million. What is related services for SPED? Why isn't that detailed? It's $375,000. I mean, that is, just to put related services, any citizen looking at that is gonna say, well, what is that?
Related services are the fulfillment of services outside of regular education for students in special ed placement. It's occupational therapy, it's speech therapy, it's physical therapy, could be vision therapy.
Okay.
Schools pay for that?
How many students is that 375,000 is related to?
I'd have to look that up, Teresa, so we'll have that for the next meeting, but it's for those students who are typically in out-of-district placements, so there's an hourly rate for each one of those service providers.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and he is from
Yep.
that. That'd be awesome. That's, they had to cut it, but you keep it 103 and they probably put the money back in later.
We did not cut that number last year as part of budget. We cannot cut any of those numbers. That $272,000 that it was in the current budget is because that's the related service cost. Special education is a cost that we can't attach at all.
Yeah, but for the 2020 actual, it was 359,000.
It all just depends on our out-of-district placement and the number of students that require those services. And that's why it's a volatile number, because that number could, we have an estimate of 375,000. We could have a student move in or somebody move out. Exactly.
You're just in or out, and they can move in or out.
And just to add to that, there's also the fact that we don't have a psychologist yet, so we contract out for about $150,000 a year.
Yeah.
So that's a big hit there. Only $100,000 of the psychologist is in there because we left the psychologist line with money in it, just in case we can find somebody. But we're going on 2 years now without one.
Is that part of this line item? The
That-
psychologist?
It's a indirect cost. What was the name of the line again? I'm sorry.
It's related services,
Yeah,
special education.
that is related services to special ed too. Yeah.
So that is got psychologist's salary in there, and haven't used it for 2 years. And you-
No. What I said to you was we haven't been able to hire one on our own for 2 years, so we had to contract out. So part of it goes in that line, and part of it still sits in the psychologist line later on, so that if we hire somebody, we can do it. Yeah.
It was some bottom amount hourly rate.
Oh yeah, exactly. So
We had last year.
yes. Yep, you're right. And just so you know, we have 29 pairs it would be with those new positions.
29 pairs, is that before the added to, or not?
No, that would be adding them. When we
That's
add those, it would be 29.
So that's the total number represented in the 530,000.
Yep.
So you currently have 25, and this budget is for 29.
Yes, and that also includes their pay increase, like we had talked about as well. Yeah, from their
From the
passing
approved, yeah.
contract. Okay.
Any other questions on page 4?
Yeah, private tuition. It's an increase of $245,000, it's at $790. I know you don't probably have it right on the top of your head, but how many placements is that?
I don't have that number. In fact, I have it somewhere. I don't know if I have it, but it was about 8 or 9, I think. But those are the students who are placed in placements outside of Winchester or Keene.
Like Cedar Crest, that type of thing?
So they're special ed placements, Special ed, federal law requires that you place a student in the least restrictive environment. It goes from a continuum of the regular classroom to hospitalization. So you could have a special day program, you could have a residential placement, and I think we have some new students that might be in those upper end placements without breaching any confidentiality. But I can give you the specific number of students in out-of-district placements the next time. And you know, these aren't fixed numbers. You're going to overspend it or underspend it, as you said, if students move out. But regardless, you have to pay it because it's a federal statute. Students on IEPs, the IEP directs.
You and I had this discussion last year.
I've been having this discussion
We
with
have
people.
had this discussion numerous. And I get what you're saying, you know, add a little bit more to, you know.
No, I don't think we're adding. I think
I don't think that may be not terminology, but you go on the fact that you might have 8 or 9 kids out of placement.
No.
This year. You might have 6 next year, you might have 12.
correct. So if we budget for 6 and we have,
Single year.
and if we budget for 6 and we have 12, then we're going to be in a deficit.
Yeah.
So, but I say, if you could be patient and wait till next Tuesday, Jen Heiss could be here, and we're typically budgeting for what we have.
Yeah, the budget is built on what we currently know. There's nobody built into that. There's not an extra student.
You have no, yeah, but when you do this budget now,
Yeah.
you're anticipating, right?
When we do this budget, no. No.
Because we're trying to project a budget that ends in 2022. Yeah.
But we have 9 kids right now, Teresa. So that budget is for what we have right now.
Yes.
We're not adding a student, we're not subtracting a student. We're basing it on what we have right now.
But okay, I get that, and I appreciate that. But next year, that line item has a $245,000 increase.
Because we've had a new placement
This year.
this year.
That's not already,
If the students placed this year and the budget was set last March, he's not in this year's budget, so now we're compensating and making the adjustment for the following year's budget. Yeah, that's the in and out. So you have any student who moves in after the budget is, any student who moves in after the budget is passed is not accounted for. So that's just add-on cost to the district.
Which makes complete sense. But so we had 1 student extra this year move in, you said?
It's either a move-in or a change in placement.
We're financially responsible for 1 extra student, and that 1 extra student.
Well, we can give you the particular numbers. Sometimes the numbers are sensitive with special ed kids because if you only have 1 in a particular placement, we don't want to be talking about that student publicly because then you've just
Identified them.
correct.
Right.
But
right.
I think there's even more, as Mary's telling me.
Right.
But
I just want to discuss the finances based on.
But so you're correct. They either moved in or we changed their placement.
Right.
It might be a student who was attending our school, but the placement was no longer appropriate.
Right.
Or the physical or cognitive conditions of those students.
But that financial responsibility that we have was basically what I'm taking out of this is it costs an extra $245,000 for 1 extra student.
No, we're not saying that. It's for all those students in that line.
So did all the students, did everybody we're financially responsible for under that line change placement? Or
Ben, I'd have to tell you that next week.
okay, because I mean,
There are more students requiring private tuitions or special education placements than there were last year.
It's certainly more than 1.
okay. Well, you just said there was one more.
There's 1 I know of, but I'm not the special ed director, but I know there's 1 currently that changed this year going into a placement
Okay.
anticipated for next year.
we just get a 1-1 yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this,
Well, and please also keep in mind that we can't always identify each of those students. And if it is only 1, should it be, we certainly can identify just 1. we have to be cautious as how we present
Yeah,
those
nobody's
numbers.
asking for that.
Right. Nobody, we don't,
And do, you know, work, and this costs this much money, this much money. You know, you have to tell me when you don't tell me.
No, Teresa, I have
Right.
a list of all the students and the out-of-district placements and the total cost.
All right. All right, let's move on. Is there any other questions about page 4? Keeping in mind that we're still not voting on anything tonight. All right, we'll move to page 5, I guess. So everyone wants to do it, let's do it that way.
I believe you. Where's your
I'm not mad, I'm just.
That's so much better.
Talk louder.
I think it's your mic. I think it's the other mic. That one's better.
Talk louder, everybody thinks I'm mad.
Teresa's having a news conference right now.
They purposely, it's probably not plugged in, you guys did that on purpose.
All right, so let's move to page 5. Does anybody have any questions about anything on page 5?
the only questions I had written down on quite a few of these pages was to do with the teacher retirement, and that was answered earlier, so.
I don't have any questions on page 5 at this time. Except for you, Teresa.
I do not.
Actually, I do have one question. So with the coach's salary, this is obviously anticipating that COVID doesn't spike the ball on that one. Is that correct? Or are we gonna
This
do
is definitely anticipating that we would be able to bring sports back in some way. We did bring, the Sports Boosters was successful in bringing soccer back, and the school was able to assist in that. Had they been able to bring basketball back, the school was not able to assist in that because we were financially unable to allow them to come in because of cleaning requirements and the cost associated. So this is definitely a positive projection that we'll be bringing students back into the school in some way, shape, or form.
It's always good to be positive.
How many positions is the guidance salaries?
Are we on the same page, Ben? Did you skip?
I'm still on page 6.
Oh, you're on
Oh,
page
we
6.
went to page 6.
Oh, I thought that's where we were.
That's okay.
Is
We were
everybody
just at the
good on
very
page
tail
5?
end.
Oh,
Page 6,
I apologize.
accepted.
The guidance salaries are 2. Guidance.
How many positions are in the guidance salaries?
Yeah, this is the guidance.
3?
3.
I did want to answer the question on the out-of-district placements, because I actually have a spreadsheet. We actually have 14 out-of-district placements. They range anywhere.
14 you said?
Yep, 14. So they range anywhere from 50 to a high end of 70.
It's not
No,
a
it's
significant-
not. It barely touches it because only certain kids qualify for it, and it's
Gotcha.
only certain situations. So, again, like I said, I don't bank on Cat Aid because I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I put some in there based on what numbers we have this year, but again, that's kind of a.
Thank you.
I can give you further clarification on catastrophic aid. Catastrophic aid kicks in after the district has paid 3 times the state average tuition. So if the state average tuition is $10,000 and that placement is $70,000, they will then kick in or contribute the $10,000 towards that end. It's not 100% reimbursement of that $10,000. It's typically a fraction of somewhere between 70,000, maybe take it back, 70% and 80%, depending what's in the state coffers. I think that amount is typically set by the state legislature.
I wonder if we have a couple of
Passing
state
that
legislators
along.
hanging around.
Yeah, but so, again, it's a lot of upfront cost for the district, and then it's a percentage of that reimbursement, assuming all your paperwork, the IEP, and the tedious paperwork of special ed is current and up to date. The application goes in at the end of the year for all the students in the state, and then it's divided out by whatever that amount is that was budgeted.
Thank you. Any other questions for page 6?
teacher's retirement guidance, is that,
That's still part of the same state.
Yeah, it's the,
no, because you just said that 3 guidance counselors are for the first line item.
Yeah, but the retirement increases are all because of the state
Oh,
retirement.
state, then, okay,
Yeah.
that's all right, okay.
All right, page 7.
I was still on page 6.
Oh, sorry, back to you,
School
Teresa.
nurse salary, is that the, she got a 2.5% increase?
It appears to be a 21.64.
the school nurse salary was increased because when our school nurse left at the, in August, we were unable to find a nurse within the salary range that we had previously been paying. So it's not, that was a starting salary for a
Okay, so
new employee.
The 44 wasn't, no, you weren't getting any bites on, so you put it up to 54?
Well, I mean, we started below that, but that's where we ended up.
Okay. Is it it's a full-time position though, right?
It's a full-time position. The school nurse has to be, have a Bachelor of Science. They can't just be an LPN any longer. They need to be an RN. Go ahead. Ken.
I think especially in the COVID era, let's not even worry about the school nurse.
Yeah, we definitely need a,
Yeah, we
they need to know all of what they're supposed to know.
Yeah, this is the,
We had an incredibly good situation because the staff that was in that position was also a resident and a parent. And it was advantageous for her because her students were here. After the cut, their family had to do some different things to ensure that their children had an adequate, place to be, and so she ended up leaving.
okay. All right, any questions on 6? All right, let's move to page 7.
What's overtime salary for?
That's occupational therapy salaries.
Occupation, oh, okay.
Yep.
Fine question, though.
Yeah, acronyms in different areas can be,
Yeah.
yeah. OT doesn't mean the same thing to everybody.
They got, wow.
Is that adding another person?
Wait a minute.
To the occupational therapy? No. Go ahead, Ken.
It's maintaining the same level of person that we had last year, but it's a new hire. There was retirement last year, so the OT is a new person.
So it's one person.
Yes.
And is this to say, so that new price of $55,620, that's what the starting salary was for the new hire?
No, well, yes. And I'm just saying, we share that person with Hinsdale,
Yeah.
so there'll be a half revenue reimbursement where we've hired the OT full-time. Hinsdale hires a certified occupational therapy assistant, and we share those half salaries with each. So there's a little bit of a revenue reimbursement too, but there's also a cost for that half-time.
Okay.
Total.
Where's the assistant budgeted in here that we pay Hinsdale?
I would have to look at it, I'm not sure.
Do you know that, Mary?
Yeah. It's in special education related services.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's another position that's
Yeah,
student related services.
Yeah, but the personnel are the same, meaning the positions, but it's just different people. And I also didn't wanted to comment for Teresa, when you were asking about, I think we were talking about the nurse, and you said, oh, we couldn't get a person for that amount of money. It's really, there's so many critical shortage areas, the school psychologist being one obvious one, that we're on year 2 of operating without a school psychologist, and we're contracting through an agency.
Yeah.
So when you asked earlier, is it a flat salary increase for persons who are not in collective bargaining agreements? If you recall last year, we tried to put a market adjustment in for some of these positions, like the school nurse, like the school psychologist, like the business administrator. So it's not only a question of having the appropriate salary, a competitive or near competitive salary. It's also the fact that there's not a lot of these people out there. With Mary leaving, there's at the moment, I think, 5 business administrator searches going on in the state. So we're about to contract with an agency, and that might turn into a long-term contract.
Which I still support 100%, by the way. Okay. We're on page 7 still, right?
Page 7.
Okay.
I don't have any questions at this time. Anybody else have anything they want to ask on 7? All right, let's move to 8. I have no questions on 8. Does anyone else have any questions on 8?
I do. On the staff development, non-district, or
CBU.
yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
No,
staff
not-
development non-discretionary.
Okay.
That's what that abbreviation
Yeah, I
is.
only have like 5 letters there, so I don't know what that was. The $2,000 increase in that, what's that? What are you anticipating on that?
We have a couple of positions that are looking for some, or that we're targeting some additional certifications for. So
Same
a
as
couple of the people that fall under the non-CBU are going to continue their education, and so we identified a need for an increase there.
Okay. Any other questions on 8? All right, let's move to page 9. You cut the board secretary and treasurer pay, I'm seeing.
Yes.
Good.
It's looking like it was possibly,
Yeah, it wasn't really, it was less about a cut and more about just bringing it in line with an actual spent over the last several years.
Gotcha. Anybody have any questions on page 9? All right, let's move to page 10.
the staff development, SAU. Is that basically the same thing as the teacher, the one I just asked about? The staff development, non-CBU and stuff, is staff development SAU, is that for training of the SAU staff?
It includes different staff, but it is something similar, yes, to ensure that if there are certifications or additional trainings that we would require of them, that they have an ability to.
Well,
Go after
that
those.
should be just for the SAU staff, right? That's what it's budgeted under, is the SAU.
Right, but SAU staff, but speech, occupational therapy, those staff fall under SAU staff as well. So I
Okay.
don't want you to be hung up on it's the superintendent or the business
Right.
manager. It
Right.
could be, it could also include those other certified professionals.
Okay, but, so did job descriptions change or something change that the requirements to be hired no longer fit anymore and they need new certifications? Is that what's,
There are training opportunities available to them every year. That was a line that got cut completely. So that's why it was put back in. You'll see that in 1 year we did spend just over $5,000, and so in knowing that none of those staff were able to take advantage of any certifications or improvements to their professional development, we added a little bit extra in there.
Yeah, so that amount, it's not requiring a change in certification, it's requiring some update. It could be a special ed conference where they're talking about the changing of the law for homeless students. It could be a facilities conference for Ian. It could be a personnel conference for Mary. It's just, information